Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October Committee of the Whole meeting. Tonight we'll be discussing, initially we'll be discussing the agenda items for our November board meeting, and then we have a couple items on our superintendent report that will be discussion, no action this evening. I'm going to go ahead and start with roll call. Director Barrows.
Here.
Director Decker.
Here.
Director Smith.
Here.
Director Zavala.
Here.
And I'm also here. So our first item on the agenda is to review contracts for the next board meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Brett.
All right, I'll go ahead and jump in unless, Jeff, you have any introductory comments or anything. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. And Jeff, if you want to jump in, feel free once you unmute if you're interested.
Sorry, Brett, I was trying to navigate the screen. Can you guys see the agenda all right? Okay, I'll pull up those as you go through them, Brett. And if there's a pause at any point, just let us know. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you. All right, so our first item is not that all of the contracts that we ask you to consider aren't very, very important. Some of them are cause for celebration a little more than others. And so the first one that we want to highlight is the recommendation to approve a purchase agreement 2021-076, which is for student laptops. And the exciting part of this is not only is in providing the technology to our students, specifically all secondary students will convert to laptops for the 22-23 school year. Middle school converting from iPads and high school students converting from Chromebooks, which will increase their productivity and functionality significantly from our surveys and other research on the topic. But the other exciting part about it is we diligently chased down some federal stimulus funding called the Emergency Connectivity Fund. And so over half of this approximately $10 million purchase will be funded by this one-time federal influx of connectivity and technology enhancement funding. So the formal recommendation is to approve the purchase agreement for laptop one-to-one devices in the amount of $9,232,194.05 plus Washington sales tax. To allow us to move forward with this purchase. Questions on, I should say also that the bid was awarded to Lenovo for ThinkPad 11E yoga laptops. So I think that detail was left off. So any questions on an exciting purchase of laptops for all of our secondary students for next school year?
I have a couple. This is very exciting. So is this new devices for all of our middle school and high school, or this will allow us to have laptops for all middle school and high school?
My understanding is it will be new devices for all students. Okay,
exciting, exciting.
Any other questions on this one? Again, great work by our ITS and purchasing department and going through all of the loopholes and challenges to get through, or the obstacles to get through to that funding. So that was a significant amount of work, and the payoff will be great for our kids. Moving on to a little bit more routine, recurring contracts that you've seen in the past, but are no less essential this year. Recommendation is to continue the relationship between the district and Fox Hire. Fox Hire is a private contracting company that provides certified OTs, occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses, and speech language pathologists and school psychologists. We have a number of vendors that provide a variety of these services, and quite frankly, the need is so great and it's so difficult to hire these positions internally that pretty much anybody that can have available staff, we want to have a contract in place so we can utilize. This particular contract with Fox Hire would be estimated to be in the amount of $178,000 for the year. Questions on that? All right, we'll move on to another special services purchase. This one is for nurse carts. The purchase agreement number is 2021-074. The selected vendor that we're recommending we purchase these carts from is William W. McGill, and the amount is $51,870 plus Washington sales tax. Questions on the nurse cart purchase? Right, hearing none. Another purchase to support our nurses and special service providers. Our recommendation is to approve purchase agreement number 2021-068 for Spot Vision Screeners. The recommendation is to purchase 22 of these devices, which will allow all of our nurses to have access to one for, obviously, for vision screening. The amount in the vendor would be School Health Corporation, and the amount would be $175,206.42 plus Washington State sales tax. Hearing no questions on the vision screener, we'll move on to some of our capital project items now. The first one is Columbia River High School 800 wing furnishings and equipment. So our recommendation is to approve purchase agreement number 2021-067, the school specialties, in the amount of estimated to be, well, I think it's in the amount of $185,000 plus Washington State sales tax. Right, hearing no questions on the furnishings and equipment for River's new 800 wing, we'll move on to the annual fire sprinkler systems contract. The quotation number that we solicited was 2021-071. It was awarded to, or we're recommending it be awarded to Costco, not Costco, but Costco Fire Protection Incorporated, a local company. The amount would be $97,811.49 plus sales tax. Questions on the fire sprinkler inspection and repair contract? Right, staying in capital projects. The next one is a recommendation to award bid number 2021-069. This one relates to Fort Vancouver High School culinary arts area improvements. So we're remodeling that program that Jeff was bragging about. We were able to enjoy at a district leadership team meeting this afternoon. The recommendation is to award the bid to Jackson Contracting, again, local company in Vancouver, for this remodel in the amount of $85,954 plus sales tax. All right, continuing on to our recommendation to approve purchase agreement number 2021-073 with Beresford Company. That name probably sounds familiar. We typically do all the carpet work through them. They have very competitive bidding through the KCDA program. This particular scope includes carpets for Fort Vancouver, Hudson's Bay, Skyview, and Lincoln and Harney Elementary Schools. The total cost to provide carpeting in all of those schools under this competitive quote is $1,839,904.56 plus Washington State sales tax. Okay, I'm sure those buildings will enjoy some new carpet. Moving on to recommendation to approve purchase agreement 2021-072 for LSW Architects to provide architectural and engineering services for a smaller scale project at Lincoln Elementary School. The amount, as you can see, is $128,800. And so yeah, our recommendation is we continue to that work with LSW at Lincoln Elementary. Okay, hearing no questions on that. The last two items we have are projects that have been completed and inspected by district staff. And so our recommendation is that you formally accept the projects that were originally bid. Under the first one is bid number 2018-052, which is the replacement Truman Elementary School. The final contract through Todd Construction amounted to $29,931,966.72 plus Washington State sales tax. And again, our recommendation is that you formally accept the project as complete, so that would begin the process of allowing them to access their retainage and clear all through all the state agencies that the requirements of the project have been met. Right, happy to close out some of these big projects and know that the students and staff are enjoying those great spaces. The last one is a similar completed project that just needs to be formally accepted by the board to continue the closeout process with the state agencies and retainage. This one is purchase agreement number 2020-091, and it is for hazardous material abatement at Walnut Grove Elementary. The contract was awarded to Three Kings Environmental out of Battleground, and the amount was $141,704 plus sales tax. So with that, I think that concludes the contract recommendations.
Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
So for policy, I'm assuming we'll turn it over to Jeff and Marilee.
That's correct. And Marilee, I'll just pull these up as we walk through them, if that works for you.
That works great. Thank you. We have two policies, board policies tonight, and then I believe Tom will update you on the public policy agenda, the legislative agenda. So the first board policy is 1822, and this policy change is required because of a new law passed by the legislature in 2021. And the law requires training programs for classified staff, certificated instructional staff, certificated administrative staff, superintendents, and school directors regarding equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and cultural competency. WASDA, the Washington State School Directors Association, will develop standards and develop training based on those standards. And then board members across the state, beginning in 2022, will be required to complete the training program during each term of their elected office. So that's policy 1822. Any questions about that one? Okay. And the second policy revision is policy 2020. And this policy was change is recommended by Darcy and her team, Darcy Franck. And the revision adds a definition for supplemental core materials and a requirement that supplemental core materials be approved before their use. This clarifies the previous process, and that completes that one. Any questions about that? Okay, thank you.
So those were both first readings.
Correct.
Okay.
They will be first readings at your next board meeting, correct?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Related to the public policy agenda, we've put forward a draft, oops, skip to the next slide, for a legislative platform. Typically, the school board endorses some recommendations to policymakers prior to the legislative session. And so Tom has compiled a set of 10 items that we're bringing forward to you for initial review and some discussion before pushing this out. I have scheduled meetings with local officials just to, one, introduce myself as the new superintendent in Vancouver, and many of them know me as the superintendent of Camas, and then two, start to share on behalf of the board some of the things that are of interest going into the legislative session. So I think you saw this last week, perhaps, and then I've gotten some feedback from board members and tweaked a couple of these items that are before you tonight. And this is something too that we don't necessarily have to go through item by item today, but more I want to call it to your attention, share it with the public so that you can direct me on items that you think should be emphasized more, or stories that need to be told that support these priorities. And so the first one, I'll just go briefly through, is about the state prototypical funding model. It hasn't been updated in a good amount of time, and the state has recognized some of the deficiencies and has tried to enhance funding, in particular around mental health and safety and security. But we would advocate for looking at the entire model and updating it. Thinking about regionalization and staff mix and some of the changes that happened with the funding structure. The legislature has said that they will go back to that. And anytime there's a major legislative thing like the McCleary decision, there's always tweaks and adjustments as that plays out. And so we'd encourage them to look at those. Thinking about the pandemic and the impact on students and staff and our families and communities. So continued investment in their academic and social, emotional, and mental health well-being. Thinking about just how we can move forward with fully funding special education. We use local levy dollars to support what's required, and also our moral obligation to support each student. And recognizing that that's not easy. It's easy for us to say fully fund, but it's very nuanced. And so we recognize that it requires creativity and an incremental approach. The technology connectivity gap was kind of enhanced through this pandemic. And so recognizing that communities across the state of Washington need to be served consistently. To continue to think about bonds, as you know that bonds require a 60% plus one, whereas levies are 50% plus one. And I think we've, as school districts and school district associations, director associations have encouraged the state to look at that. We have been successful in passing our bonds and grateful for our community, and several projects on tonight's agenda are the fruit of our community support. But we also recognize that not all districts have been able to pass bonds. And so it's important that those communities have schools that support students as well. The State Construction Assistant Program is another recognition of that and advocating for that assistance. We benefit from that assistance, want to make sure that that's continues and distributed across the state. Thinking about equity and a focus on the whole child. So if they are putting forward new policies or programming, just recognizing those that are important. Thinking about you as school boards and how to support you in the work. It's very complex. And so we want their consideration of school boards as they move forward with any programming or policy. And on the same kind of flipping that coin, when the new programs or policy are put into place, without a funding mechanism, just recognition that requires us to use local funding sources. And so please just being thoughtful about that at the legislative level and the impact that it would have on school districts. So I think those probably reflect, because they're based on the conversations that we've had and over time, your policies in the past. But I want to make sure before I start to share those publicly and move the draft off of those, that those reflect the interest of the board. And so maybe tonight, just high level, what you know, if we're resonating, and then specifically if you have wordsmithing or things that you want me to amend, I would encourage you to reach out to me that way too.
Anyone have any feedback for Dr. Snell?
I'm delighted to see all of these. These are much needed changes, or much needed advocacies. Every time we pass our levies with, 65%, and then we watch our neighboring school districts not able to pass their, able to pass their bonds at like 58, able to get 58% of their population to support the bonds, but that's not enough. It's just heart-wrenching. And those kids deserve high quality buildings to learn into. And, you know, as everybody who has ever worked in education knows, the stress and the frustration of not having adequate funding for our special education needs just increases over time. And we really need to come up with a solution for that. So I'm happy to see those things on there.
I've already shared some feedback. I appreciate everything on this list, and I think it's a really strong list of priorities. One that I think is really important to highlight is number 5. I think we've learned in the last year and a half how much connectivity and access really can exacerbate disparities, or it can also provide opportunities depending on how access is distributed. So it also shows kind of, I think, that interconnection between public schools and the community where our schools sit, that we are all together in a community, and how access to technology is important. I wonder, in looking at this list, if there is a way to present a top 3 or so, just because it can be easy to overlook all of this. And having participated in the legislative day in the Hill, you get such a short amount of time to have those conversations, but knowing that the funding model is so outdated, and then maybe picking out a couple more that really highlight or bold or stand out at the top that we could just speak to, as those are our top, but we stand by all these others additionally. I don't know if that agrees with anyone else.
That would,
oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, I think that's a great idea. I just worry when you said, you know, the top 3, you know, my top 3 might be different than somebody else's top 3. You know, so we might all have favorites or ones that are kind of priorities for our own.
Well, a lot of them, I think there are strong statements about a commitment to make, but they might not require immediate, like, legislative action or priority. I mean, supporting school boards or continuing to invest in supporting students throughout and after the pandemic, that's kind of an ongoing absolute conversation. So I just wonder if some that have a more maybe unattended items, like the staff allocation formula, for instance, that the problem has been addressed, but we aren't necessarily solving it yet. And I would trust other people to make those selections. I think this list maybe looks a little overwhelming if you're having that quick conversation with a representative.
I'm happy to put, you know, just a short survey of the board to rank these, just to give us an idea. There could be some consistency, and to Tracy's point, it could be kind of across the board, but that, you know, I could give you an individual activity to do that, and that would help staff potentially determine, especially as you mentioned, Kyle, when we only have a moment, perhaps, what those talking points might be.
I like homework. Thank you.
I don't.
Anyone else have any thoughts on the public policy agenda?
I'll just jump in. I think I like the idea of maybe having some priorities, like you said, Kyle. I think that there's also the reality of, like, there are bills that would be presented or proposed, and letting you know, our lobbyists know kind of where our priorities are with regards to this bill or that bill, etc. One of the things that I was looking for was the I think was ended up being number 4 here, the prioritizing special education funding, because that is woefully underfunded, and always has been, and there have been really very few meaningful attempts to fix that. One thing that I would add that I was also looking for that I don't see here that's also woefully underfunded, and that is supports for our English language learners. And I'm not really sure where it might, because I think this is a good list. I don't know that we need an 11th, but if there's somewhere that we can maybe kind of work it in, that's something that's also terribly underfunded, but also an increasing need, not just for our district, but for other districts as well.
I agree with that. Thank you.
So a next step then, I will take what we currently have, and Tom and I will work on that. Perhaps add a little language around supporting students and include some of the other groups that you mentioned, Wendy, that might benefit from a different look. And then also give you an opportunity to prioritize a bit. And then we'll come back with another version of this for you.
So next, Jeff, I believe it is teaching and learning. There's one item.
Yeah. I'm trying to get out of my presentation and get back to board docs here. And I'm not sure, is Bill, we were facilitating meetings here at 5:30, so I'm not sure if Bill or Darcy is on yet. Are you guys on to speak to this one?
I am on, and I think,
Yeah, I am as well.
okay.
I think this, Darcy, this is you with the IMC. It's not the website yet.
For instructional materials approval?
Correct.
Sorry, okay. Yeah, so any questions about any of our titles? I think we've got Good Dog McTavish, which didn't bring up any concerning content. Same thing, and that was for grades 3 to 6. And then we had Warhorse, and we actually decided to extend that approval instead of restricting it just to 8th grade, 6th through 8th grade for some of our sites that have multi-level classrooms. So, you know, some of the classes have students that are 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we felt that it was appropriate for all 3 grade levels. How America Works is actually a resource for 12th grade civics class, and a resource for history that is easily accessible, very engaging, very visually engaging. So we thought that would be an appropriate resource, and to get the student engagement. And Waiting for Godot, and that was one that is pretty unique in the fact that it is a play, and the content is highly engaging. So want to put that one up for approval as well. So any questions on any of those titles? Oh, Waiting for Godot was on my sophomore reading list. So it's been around a while. Yes, and the teachers are trying to make it fresh and new. So yeah.
Doesn't look like there's any questions.
All right, thank you.
So we'll, if you're okay, Kyle, we'll switch to the superintendent's report and some items that we have for updates and discussion. And I'll share my slides, and then I'll invite some of our guests to walk you through. So the first one is we had our student equity town hall last night, and so wanted to give you an update, and I think Janelle is on the call, so I'll turn it over to her.
Good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on the town hall. But prior to doing that, just want to revisit what our what student equity is in VPS. Student equity is about focusing on our student experience and experiences and serving every student in their unique needs and ensuring opportunities for them to succeed, growing student self-esteem, fostering critical thinking, and providing all of our students with safe schools that accept and honor their culture. Next slide, please. So last night's town hall puts us in at the community voice portion of our timeline. And so when we look at our timeline, we've accessed stakeholder voice at the end of September with our Equity Advisory Committee. Our Discipline Equity Steering Committee also shared feedback with us. And so last night we had the opportunity to hear from other stakeholders at the town hall. Next slide. Right. And so folks who joined us last night had an opportunity to preview the policy on Tuesday, as of Tuesday, October 12th, where the policies were placed on our school district website, and they'll be placed there up until our November 2nd, the next meeting that we have. And so they'll be available for feedback. It'll be available for feedback then. Last night's town hall will be posted to our website tomorrow. The information from it will be posted tomorrow, and folks will have another opportunity to participate in listening sessions next Thursday. Next slide. So last night's town hall really focused on our why and our mission and our why, as well as talking about what culturally responsive education is in VPS. Largely, what it focuses on is teaching and learning, stakeholder engagement, and we looked at our draft equity policy or a proposed equity policy. We gave folks an opportunity to answer questions, ask questions, and we answered questions. They'll have an opportunity to engage in small group discussion on Thursday. But last night we had approximately 50 participants. Some of the themes that we noticed were access, accountability. We did see a theme as far as folks appreciating the board's commitment to the work as well. Are there any questions?
I actually have a question about, you mentioned that tomorrow the webinar will be on the website for people that didn't get a chance to see it. I know there were essentially like two parts to the webinar, because there was the pre-recorded video and then there was the live Q&A. Are those going to be like joined into kind of one video that people can watch, or will the video that's posted be, here are the pre-recorded video links, and then separate, here is the live Q&A? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. There'll be two separate videos.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I really appreciated you guys having the beginning videos available in so many different languages. I think that that's really, that was great, just to be more accessible to our community. So thank you guys for doing that, because I know it was a lot of work from our interpreters and the whole team.
Well, that's certainly our goal, and we know that we've got a lot of work to do, and so we're just focusing on how we can improve in that area. Thank you.
It does take us a little bit of time to get the webinar part up, because we do need to translate it into multiple languages. So that's why there's a delay, not just being able to post it right away. Any other questions for Janelle? Thank you, Janelle.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next topic this evening is the Vancouver Innovation, Technology and Arts Elementary School that we're naming VITA. for short. And I know that we discussed this a little in our last meeting, and the board gave us some feedback and asked some questions. And so we wanted to come back to you with some responses to those questions, and then also engage you in some discussion about what it could look like for the next school year. And so we have Jennifer Blechschmidt on with us, the planning principal, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. After all of our tours, it's nice to be back and talking about VITA again. So as you know, that we're ready to open VITA in the fall of 22. And then just due to a variety of factors, we have enrollment fluctuation currently is something that we're dealing with. At the same time, all of these things are happening. We're also looking at our student equity policy, the direction we're going, programs of choice. It's kind of this time where confluence of all of these things are coming together at the same time, which is actually really great. And then right behind or after that, we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is, as you know, going to be delayed just due to kind of the accessibility in the pipeline for resources. So that will be delayed potentially next winter-ish to be completed, I believe. And then finally, we're proposing to you and just talking more tonight with all of those things in consideration, but the proposal for considering VITA to be a learning lab school with the purpose of serving all of our students, or at least most of our elementary students, upwards of potentially 7,000 students. I think that's in a later slide. And then our teachers as well. And through that process, we would be able to hopefully capitalize on some of our equity coaches and some other folks as well. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
Oh, it's an itchy trigger finger tonight. It keeps on.
That's
jumping.
okay. No worries. No worries.
Yeah, and that question, I think that I moved the slide too soon, is just kind of where we've heard the board is at, thinking about this opportunity and how to leverage it moving forward to really have the most positive learning impact on our community. Gosh. Sorry.
All right. So I think that, that Tom shared this in his historical perspective already, but that there was, through the redevelopment of the downtown area and waterfront, potentially for up to 4,200 living units would be constructed, and that was per the district demographer. And then that forecast at the time showed that we could potentially have up to 2,600 underhoused elementary students by 2027. Clearly, in a variety of ways, the pandemic has created uncertain current enrollment projections. So that's about where we're sitting at this moment. Oops, there we go. Okay. So tonight, what we're really wanting to talk about is just after seeing the schools and having some brief conversations about considering VITA to be a lab school, talking through that further with you, questions you have, what that might look like, who, when, how, some of the specifics, so we could get to kind of the next steps in the direction we're going to go for VITA for 22-23.
So at this point, we would love if, you'd like to talk a little about your thinking related to looking at this as a lab school, some of the things that you might like to see if that's a direction that we go. I know that on our tours, you were able to kind of look at it and have some conversations and have some time to think about this. So just open it up to board discussion at this point.
Well, I'll go first and then I'll try and be short. And then if there's anything left over at the end, I'll I'll add that I'll try to be short, I promise. I expressed such excitement about this idea when I heard about it. The idea that we could take this amazing building, and I can't wait for the community to see this building, to take this building and not just give 250 kids an opportunity to use it and a handful of teachers to use it, but all of our students the chance to use it, and all of our teachers an opportunity not just to use it, but also to learn through it. And we have such innovative and eager teachers in our district that are just, they're literally chomping at the bit to learn how to do project-based learning and how to incorporate collaboration and the arts and innovative ways of looking at how to do the core curriculum that engages all of the mind of their students, but not having like access to the right resources, and bringing all of those people, those kids that are ready for a new adventure, and those teachers that are ready to learn into this building with support and resources and just inspiration. I will stop there because I am just obviously very excited about this whole opportunity, and what an opportunity to bring the community together around something. So I'll be quiet now.
Well, I'm going to jump in and say everything Kathy said, ditto. Thank you, Kathy. I think I too feel a lot of enthusiasm for this idea of using it as a lab school, like truly a lab school next year, where not just a handful of students and teachers get to kind of explore and innovate, but also, I mean, but everybody, right? And one thing I just want to say is that I really appreciate the staff's thinking and problem solving on this one, because as Jennifer said, there was kind of a confluence of things that we were having to grapple with, and not really sure what direction we were going to be heading in. And so I just want to thank Jennifer and everybody who was involved with coming up with this idea and really living up to Vita's name of being innovative in your thinking, and finding a way. Honestly, I think that this is almost better than the original plan in the sense that we get to really bring the project-based learning access to the building. I mean, it is a beautiful building, to everybody. So everybody gets to kind of experience it before we move forward into something a little bit more permanent and concrete. So you've got teachers who maybe haven't experienced project-based learning before, get to experience it and try it out, and then maybe later decide, well, Vita would be where they want to be. Families get to kind of experience it and connect with the building and envision what that might be like for their child before they apply to the program. So I think it's just a really smart and very productive way to solve what was feeling like quite a quandary. And the timing of it really helps us too, in terms of RBG coming on, getting pushed back a year and then not having to readjust boundaries and then having to readjust boundaries again. Like that was going to be a huge headache. So just thank you so much for very, very smart problem solving.
Tracy or Sandra?
I honestly feel, I mean, I'll do what Wendy did, and I'll just ditto what they both have said. I feel like it's such a creative way, thinking outside the box, figuring out how we could really leverage this building to benefit our whole district. Like Kathy was saying, instead of just, a couple hundred students. So I think this is a great idea. I'm really looking forward to, if it happens, seeing it roll out and, hopefully getting to come and visit and see it in action. I think it's just a great way for kids and teachers to experience it. And like Wendy was saying, I think it's going to inspire some of our teachers and inspire some of our students, giving them that test run of really seeing if this is going to be kind of a fit that they would like to do more long term.
and then to ditto wet 3 times. It reminds me a lot of the excitement around like BizTown, how the kids really enjoy going to BizTown. And I think that is just gonna amplify and letting like a lot more students to go, and kind of I guess I just feel like a lot of leadership and a lot of creativity. So I'm also really excited to see the way we create this new building.
So I'm just going to add a little bit. I also want to thank you, the whole team, for coming up with kind of a creative solution for this transitional time that we have going on with enrollment and projects kind of taking longer due to COVID shortages. This is an amazing opportunity, like all the other directors said. I mean, we have students and staff that get to benefit from this beautiful new inspired space. And I also think that as the 2017 bond program comes to an end, I mean, this is one of the final projects that will be completed, and that we have so many of our students that will get to touch and interact with that space. And I think it will just kind of be, it will really showcase to the community how grateful and how beneficial their support, their ongoing support is. I know I had concerns just about making too many commitments early, because this equity work is really our priority right now. So I also appreciate that this will be an interim while we continue to fine tune the equity work, finalize that then we can pivot and really perfect and make sure that VITA reflects that equity policy. I just think this is a really good opportunity. So again, thank you for all the work and for the slight pivot and creative problem solving. I think it's also interesting with kids not having access to field trips for the last 2 years. I mean, this is going to be a pretty epic comeback where kids are going to get this amazing learning experience. So anyways, thank you. I'm excited to hear more about it.
Well, thank you for the comments, and we appreciate your brainstorming through this process to help us get to this point. Jennifer has done just some preliminary, I think we'll stop with this slide tonight, but just to give you an idea, we've looked at what this could look like if you were wanting us to move in this direction. And of course, we'll have to do a lot of planning and engaging with the community and our schools and principals and staff. And so you giving us this direction really helps us, and being clear that this is the 22-23 school year direction. This isn't that we're changing the course and this won't become a school. It's just pausing and aligning it. That was reflected in the comments tonight that I heard from the board. So Jennifer, could you talk through just some of the logistics as we were thinking about how this might work if this is the direction that you wanted to go?
Sure thing. So we initially came up with 6 different kind of options that we were working through, and then did pros and cons through that, and then got it down to 2. So it was pretty robust, that we were trying to look at different ways that we could creatively serve our kids and provide this experience for our teachers. Considering, and also under that umbrella of the equity and access. So we have kind of 2 that we're down to that we want to share with you. So it could be all K3, or it could be K3 through grades 4 teachers. So that's up to 500 teachers if that's what was chosen, could participate and learn from each other. That would increase our, systemic capacity to all 24 schools serving elementary students to integrate some of this new teaching into their schools. So that includes VLA, it includes Tangeman. We're really trying to be inclusive of all of our schools. And then the other is that we would have that opportunity for those same kind of 2 different options there to experience VITA, to participate in project-based learning, complete a meaningful culminating project to share with their family. I think it's going to be something that's really important to us as a takeaway, that hopefully we're not still in COVID, but that the families could, we can show that end result and what project-based learning is really about, while also engaging our communities in that process. So if we, depending on which model we go with, we have the capacity to serve just under 7,000 VPS elementary students in the learning lab experience. So what is that, a third of our student population potentially? So it's really exciting to think about that and the possibility of changing practices and cross-pollination across our district.
Jennifer, could you speak just a little to the time frame of this experience in this model?
Sure. So the two we're looking at, I think it might be on a later slide, but if we go, yeah, thank you. If we go to the K3 model, all students get 2 weeks of PBL experience. Fourth grade students would not participate. And just thinking about, so as they matriculate up for the next year, that's our fifth graders. So there's probably less students in fourth grade that are going to be moving in fifth, and parents that would want to make that change in that grade level. Then when you hop over to the K4 option to include fourth grade, so third and fourth grade would only get 5 to 9 days, and that, we've gone through the whole school year and got it somewhat calendared out depending on holidays and so forth. But then our K2s would only get 5 days to go to VITA. So, that's a little challenging when you're trying to consider project-based learning, the depth and breadth, and culminating project and so forth. So that was our capacity within the system to be able to serve those students. Their teachers would come with them, as you know, but then we would also have additional staff that would be there to support these kiddos as well.
So as you, and this is something I think, since we're just initially, we needed your direction before we could start doing some of this planning. So it's something for you to think about as directors, either the K3 option or the K4 option. The other piece that would need to happen is communication with our staff and what that looks like. So if I'm a teacher, I have 180 days, I'm going to get nervous right away if I think that I don't have the same amount of time next year. And so we would look at the learning standards that would be addressed during this unit, and making sure that those are standards that teachers would know ahead of time, so that backs that out of the curriculum and the expectation for them during the 180 days. So, this is exciting, but I also want to let people know that there's a lot of questions that will come up with this that we need to work through. But we needed to get your direction first before we could start working through those questions, if that makes sense.
So are you asking for input right now on this slide?
I mean, if you have it, but I also want it to be you to have some time to think about it. And so maybe some initial reactions, and then we'll kind of process some more and come back with a recommendation for you based on the conversations that we have.
Can I just ask a question? When are we anticipating VITA, like not next year, but the year after? Like we have this plan for the coming school year, but after that, when we open it up as more of a permanent sort of situation, are we anticipating having fifth graders there?
Yes.
Okay.
We are anticipating that, but as Jennifer said, from past practice, moving in the last year of your school year, typically the numbers are not as high, whether it's, an eighth grader or a fifth grader. So we're anticipating smaller numbers potentially.
Right, I understand that. I'm just wondering if having the K4 option where the fourth graders get that opportunity to go to VITA, that might maybe encourage more people to apply and go for, even though it's only 1 year.
Yeah. I'm just curious. and I'm sure the answer is logistics and timing and schedule. I'm just curious how quickly, like how 5th grade got eliminated. I feel like that's a really good age to dive in. And it seems like a really good opportunity leading into middle school that kids would have this opportunity. And to me, this seems less about marketing VITA to families to be interested, but more providing this unique learning experience for both staff and students. So I guess I'm curious about 5th grade.
Great question. So of course, our hope would have been to included K-5, but just the sheer capacity of trying to run over 7,000 students through a program that serves 300 students in the number of weeks, it was just really simply, Kyle, about the math. We didn't have the capacity to do that. And that's really all it came down to, was just the simple math in the school year, the number of weeks, the number of students, the number of space.
And certainly, we just are presenting 2 options to you today.
Yep.
And so if the board feels like, maybe we're looking at a 2nd through 5th grade, you can make the argument either direction. This is totally out of the box, so there isn't necessarily a roadmap for this. That perhaps kindergartners, their time in their school is important, and pulling them out for 2 weeks might be challenging. We can make it work, whatever direction that you want us to go with this. I think I tasked Jennifer with giving us some possibilities to open the discussion.
I appreciate that. And I think from my experience, sometimes opportunities are earned as you get older and move through a school. So it's easy to justify, oh, K1 aren't quite there, or, kindergartners don't join those assemblies, et cetera. It seems like a harder explanation to really sell to your 5th grade families. But I think my priority is that whatever grades we land on, it's all great. All students of those grades in the district have access. So including JTC, VVLA, and I know everyone's nodding. But I guess I would just want to know what the impact was, because and I don't, maybe BizTown replaces it, but I know not necessarily all schools have BizTown. It's just one day versus this intensive project-based learning. That's a bit of a disconnect for me, but.
I'm curious if other board members have any initial response to the, which grade levels?
I'm still kind of noodling it. Just because I see so many great opportunities for all the grade levels, but we can't push all the grade levels through. And being, with my focus so much being on the earlier grades, but I can also see where maybe when the other kids in their building are out of the building, then those kindergartners and 1st graders will have an entire building to themselves, and what other opportunities the staff that remain can have. But then the other question is, so if we're opening this up to the staff at a building to, they're going with, is it just the classroom teachers that are going with, or are all the specialists going too, so that they can figure out how to integrate it? And if the specialists are going, then what happens for our kids that are left behind? I mean, these are just questions. I'm not expecting any answers. These are all the things that are running through my head right now. So it's just indicative of how many moving parts and pieces that you have to contend with. And once you settle on one thing, then you have to go, but what happens here? And then you settle on that, and that's but what happens here? It's sort of like cleaning out your closet that you haven't been in for a long time. So I I am unsettled as to the grade levels. I realize that we just can't send everybody through at
When-
of all the grade levels. So I need to think a lot more about it.
Thank you, Kathy. Wendy, any initial reactions?
Well, I agree with Kathy. I think we want everybody to go. We want everybody to have, a good amount of time there. Obviously, that's just not feasible. I'm kind of like Kathy, kind of torn in terms of, do you want more grade levels to experience it, but for shorter windows of time, or do you want fewer, but they get 2 weeks, which is a really significant amount of time, and you can really do some exciting projects with that amount of time, so it's a tough one, and I'm like Kathy, not really sure where I fall on that. I would just maybe throw out the idea that regardless of what grade bands we settle on, that the teachers in those other grade bands, if we can find a way for them to be able to do the professional development piece, even if they don't have their classes in the building, but to at least get them that project-based learning professional development, and to be able to maybe go and witness it in action, even if it's a different grade level, but just to kind of see how it looks, I think that would be valuable. So even if we don't have the 5th graders there, maybe the 5th grade teachers can get a few days out there to see what it looks like. But yeah, I'm still kind of thinking about this one too, in terms of what, if it's not going to be all 5 grades, then what grades, get left out, or what grades get less time, right? So it's, sorry, Jennifer. I don't have an answer for you.
That part's easy. We know what our capacity is. We just have to
Right.
plug in the right grades. No
Right.
problem.
Sandra, do you have thoughts?
I guess I'm leaning more towards 2nd through 5th. I think kindergartners and 1st graders, I think, are a little more naive. We don't have to tell them, I think as a 5th grader, knowing maybe that I wouldn't be able to go to a new school for the one only time, I think that would kind of be a bummer. So I don't know, that's kind of just more my perspective on it, is just 2nd through 5th, where I think the 2nd through 5th graders have a little more capacity to also do a little harder projects, a little bigger projects. I think also just the logistics of busing kindergartners and 1st graders and getting them settled. And I think that's just like, I could just picture that being a whole, would take the 5 days to figure out how to, manage all of that. And so I guess I just feel like a 2nd grader would have much more time management and know kind of how to follow guidelines and all that. So yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Tracy?
I think we're definitely going to have to sit on it. I can see pros and cons of both. I think when Kyle was bringing up, the opportunity for 5th grade, I don't necessarily see it as like marketing Vita to 5th graders. But I do think that the opportunity that a student could go there and spend a couple weeks and perhaps be inspired to, learn in that style more permanently. I don't necessarily see it as marketing Vita to those younger grades, but I do think it's presenting this opportunity to them. And so while I feel like it would be nice for 4th and 5th graders to have that experience really would just be kind of I don't want to say like an isolated experience, but it would be this great experience, but then they go to middle school versus this is an experience that we're kind of exposing these younger students to, this style of learning and project-based learning. I see it as kind of inspiring them or letting them see that opportunity of this could be how you learn every day. And I guess whether you call that marketing or not, I just think that experience for our younger grades that potentially could see that more long-term opportunity is kind of where I lean to. But again, I think there's pros and cons to both. And I think we really would have to sit down and tease out kind of really what our vision and what our purpose is of this year. And I think that will help to define then what grade level bands we would want to target for, whether it's we do every grade and it's just a short amount of time just to give them that great experience, or whether it's really to inspire them for kind of the future options that VITA might have. I think we need to kind of tease that out.
This is really helpful to listen. I know it feels like it's maybe back and forth a little bit, the feedback, but that's okay. Kyle, you want to finish
Well,
up?
I just wanted to add, I think Kathy said something interesting, knowing that as we cycle grades out of buildings, there will be empty classrooms at the home school. So just in terms of knowing that we're all going to still think about this and regroup later, but I guess another question would be, what kind of project-based learning opportunity could there be at their home school for the grades that don't get to go, knowing that we don't have capacity? I mean, I can think through, just the pod arrangement, and if you have fourth grade gone or fifth grade gone and fourth grade's there, or kindergarten and first, whatever it is, that you might have the opportunity to do something a little bit more innovative in that week.
Yeah, it's great perspective. I think the other thing that the direction you're giving us tonight allows us to do is to engage stakeholders. And so talk to elementary staff, connect with students, and see, the same questions that you guys are wrestling with, and bring back some feedback to you, and some recommendations based on what we heard for tonight, and trying to move forward. And I think the point I think several of you made is really trying to establish what the outcomes of this year are for us, and then aligning the programming to those outcomes. But tons of opportunity. Like, this is super exciting to just think about the possibility with this. So really appreciate your flexibility and support. And Jennifer, thank you for putting together the presentation tonight. So I think I'll move us to the next item if you guys are okay with that. Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Oman to start us off, and Darcy Frank.
Thank you, Dr. Snell. Good evening, board. It's great to see everybody tonight. So you heard Dr. Snell talk about essential standards and kind of the impact on that moving to this VITA model. And so what we're going to share tonight is a teacher-facing website called the Curriculum and Instruction Hub. And it is essentially what we are working on is creating a site that would have all of the teacher resources, essential standards, just about everything that would support teaching and learning. If you want to move to the next slide, Jeff, and click on that link, please. So we're going to just share some high level features of this site, how teachers access it, how they might use it. Next week, we'll come back to you at the study session and share where we're at with our public facing website with some of our curricular resources, and really getting to that transparent level for all of our stakeholders. So Darcy and her team have put in a lot of work on the Curriculum and Instruction Hub. And if you look just to the left side there on the menu, you can see that you can access the essential standards, the curriculum resources by grade level, early literacy resources, the instructional materials approval and new course approval. That would be for your high school, secondary primarily, some remote learning resources, and then really getting into some content area resources. We have iReady, social emotional learning. I believe there's some panorama resources there. And so just some one-stop shopping for all. I'm going to briefly turn it over to Darcy to talk about how teachers access this material and how they might use that to support their classroom.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening again. So just wanted to create a resource for teachers where they can access all of our materials very easily. So before, it was hard to find some things. The way our current portal is organized, you have to do, 3 or 4 clicks, and you have to look for things, and you have to know kind of where it would be under what department. And so we were hoping that by creating our curriculum and instruction hub, we could have everything in one place. So we have put this on, we've pushed it out to everybody's desktop. It is on ClassLink. And again, it's really right now, it is for teachers and principals to use as part of their planning process. And so with the essential standards kind of front and center there, and all of the curriculum resources by grade level, we listened to the teachers and giving us suggestions for how it can be organized. And during our October 8th PD day, we introduced this to many teachers, and we got some feedback, and we continue to make improvements about what is in there and how easy it is to find. So we're collecting that feedback, and it is definitely a live document, an interactive document. So we'll be consistently adding to it. As a matter of fact, we're collecting PLC resources to add to it. So as we are working on different initiatives and we're creating new materials, we are going to be housing them here for easy access.
Thank you, Darcy. Under programs on the left menu, I'm just curious if there's information yet for dual language, because I know that the dual language programs kind of are their own beast a little bit. But
yeah, and we do have, and we're going to be updating all the time, but we do. So we have Avid, we have CTE, we have dual language. So right now the dual language is really a shared drive. So it's got, a bunch of resources within the shared drive. So as we move through and we reformat and we try to come up with kind of a general format, then we will be making changes. But yeah, we tried to put everything in here and at least link to what we have, and then to continue to improve the visual content.
And obviously this is designed with teachers as the audience, and they'll be using it and interacting, but I'm just wondering what of this could be shared publicly in terms of access, as parents want to know, what are my kids learning, or what are the essential learning standards for 7th grade math? There does seem to be an appetite for that. How do we evolve this into public facing? Obviously not all of it.
Well, thank you for asking, because that is exactly what we're going to be working on. So Bill kind of mentioned next week, we're going to come and talk a little bit more about the public facing pages that we have created so far. They haven't gone live yet because we continue to get feedback and, want to work with our communication department. So it's been a collaborative effort to make sure we get the content and get it looking the way we want so that it's easy. Our hope is to have everything 1 to 2 clicks away for parents. So we're starting with our social emotional learning and our health and sex ed information. So we're going to get that out first, and then we're going to continue to create those public facing pages with exactly what you're asking, Kyle. So with the essential standards and the content areas. So for our reading and our math and our programs, our dual language, and get everything looking nice so that we end up with something very much like our hub for our community.
I just have to say, having used the black hole known as the portal, I am so excited for our teachers and our staff, because what existed before was, I mean, to say that it was difficult to navigate is an understatement. I mean, it basically never got used. Things got stuffed in it, and then it didn't, you couldn't use it because it was too difficult to find anything. So this was a heavy lift because I know how just awful it was before. And so I'm so excited. Thank you for for the work that you guys have done and your staff has done, because this is going to really help teachers when they have questions find the answers and not have to sort through and knock on a whole bunch of other doors and call a whole bunch of people. Wow, I wish people knew how disorienting and difficult it was to use whatever we had before to see how beautiful this is. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, Kathy. I will definitely share that with my team. They are pretty amazing. So it's very fun to build. It'll just take us, some time to get it refined, but thank you for that.
Is there I know you were talking about how you've kind of shared this with some teachers and gathering feedback, and you're is there a feedback mechanism that teachers, because we have such a large staff, but if a 5th grade teacher at Lincoln notices that there could be additional content added to some, what would be the forum for kind of making those tweaks or those suggestions?
Yeah, right now we've asked them to just email us.
Okay.
So we've got, all the content area TOSAs on there. So if there's a science question, they email Gil. But it would be great to, just have a little feedback button or something. So yeah, right now it was a Google survey for teachers that we've taken through. But yeah, we will definitely keep opening up those opportunities for people to share. So we've gotten it out there. We've all put it in our signature lines and everything so that it's really easy to find. But I think definitely we want to make sure that we are consistently gathering that feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bill or Darcy? And they will be coming back with the next iteration. So to your point, Kyle, kind of sharing what we're working on next to try to increase the partnership between families and schools around what we're learning. So really appreciate Bill and Darcy. Thank you for joining us this evening and that information. We'll transition to the next topic under teaching and learning, and I'm going to turn it over to Christy as I share the screen.
Good evening, directors. It's good to be with you. I think this is my first time getting to be on this end of the webinar, so that's exciting. Jeff asked me to talk a little bit about our work around PLCs, and I know lots of you are educators and probably already know what this is, but I did want to take a chance that everybody knew. So just to give a little background, PLC stands for Professional Learning Communities. We use that term constantly, PLC, so just making sure we all know what that is. And it's essentially teachers or educators working together to improve student learning. The thing that I think is so important to know about PLCs is it's really about teacher efficacy, collective efficacy, how teachers feel about their ability to impact student learning and student growth. And when they engage in what the research is calling collaborative conversation based on evidence or data, that's when we really see student learning take off. And using a PLC structure and having teachers feel like they can make a difference and they can impact student growth is the second highest factor in student learning that we know about in research. So PLCs turn out to be super important. Can I have the next slide, Jeff? One of the first things we did when I came in July, as our new team got together, was to think about this opportunity we had to join the statewide project. It's a 3-year commitment. We're a new team. We're trying to figure out all the different things that we knew we needed to tackle or get involved with. And this seemed so important that we wanted to sign on. So we asked a bunch of questions, talked to a bunch of people, and we did sign on. So here we are. It's a multi-dimensional team. It includes teachers, principals, those of us in the central office. I know you guys have met with the WASA project and gotten a little information on the PLC project also. The teachers that have come to join us are phenomenal and really leaders in their field and leaders in the district, and they've been just a blast to work with. We are meeting once or twice a month, depending on the month, and doing a lot of learning. So far, it's all on Zoom. And so you can imagine a full day of Zoom learning is pretty exhausting, but we're finding a lot of synergy as we get our stride. These are the 4 questions that we are asking teachers to work with when they're in their teacher teams together. So what do we want kids to be able to know and do? How will we know if they've learned it? What do we do if they didn't learn it? And what if kids already learned it? Then what are we going to do? What we find that most teacher teams get stuck on are the first 2 questions. And so the tool that Darcy and Bill just shared, for example, where all of the instructional resources and the essential standards are all in one place, that's part of what we hope will get people out of questions 1 and 2 and into the real nitty-gritty of 3 and 4, which require that we have assessed students, so we understand how they're performing, what gaps they might have, how much they might already know, and how much acceleration we need to give them. And that's where we really want to see teacher teams diving into data and making next steps to tweak their instruction to meet the needs of their kids. So next one. Because we want teachers in that wrestling around with data, looking at instructional practice, we really see the PLC process as the umbrella for our student equity work. Everything that needs to happen in the classroom to ensure that all students are getting what they need, all students are exposed to rigorous and engaging instruction, gets fleshed out, fine-tuned, collaborated on in the PLC. So that's where we're going to see our high levels of access, develop student belonging, ensure fairness and inclusion from really engaging curriculum. I made my little graphic here to help me think about it, but I also wanted to share with you guys, I don't know if you've heard of guaranteed and viable curriculum, but really that's how we get to equity. Guaranteed and viable curriculum means that we agree what gets taught. It gets taught consistently well from grade to grade, that at all of our schools, kids are getting the same educational opportunities and the same instructional repertoire and access to rigorous curriculum that's engaging and relevant to them. And viable means we have distilled it enough that we know we can teach it within our 180 days that we have available to us for each grade. I think there's some research that got done around how many standards we have, and if we really taught all the standards that are in the Common Core, we would need to offer 22 years of elementary education, something ridiculous like that. So it really requires us to get nitty-gritty about what we're teaching kids. I think one of the most important things to me anyway, and this is, I tried to really work with my staff when I was a building leader, is this represents a shift from what is taught to what is learned. So it's a lot less about teaching and a lot more about student learning. And that, I think that helps frame your work in a little bit of a different way. So under the umbrella, again, we're thinking of the PLC as a way to capture all the different things we're involved in. And we're involved in a lot of stuff here. I think we're pretty initiative rich as we think about all the things that we're hoping teachers learn to do or feel good and competent about. So, but part of our equity policy in particular includes inclusive practice, multi-tiered systems of support, which is essentially knowing how to use data to structure learning opportunities for both academic and behavioral support for kids, universal design for learning, and culturally responsive education. All this alignment and work through the PLC will help us align to ensure, again, consistent, rigorous engaging for all kids at every school. So this is what we're up to now. We've been in the project for 2.5 months with our 12-person team. So some of our work has just been to understand what's in place already. And as the executive director team is out working in schools, that's one of the things we're working on with our leader teams is, where are you in the PLC process? Are your teachers working on questions 3 and 4? Are they in questions 1 and 2? Do you have some teams that are knocking it out of the park? What are bright spots and where are our opportunities to help teams move further into their practice? Last time we met, which was a week and a half ago, we started, what do we want to see in 3 years? And we did some backwards planning and we split into small groups to get a handle on some of the elements of that. Darcy and her team are wrestling around with the essential standards, trying to really nail down. Some of our essential standards are truly essential and they're pretty finite. Others got pretty big. And so we need a little refinement on how do we truly narrow them down so that we can assure that all kids get access to them and get some mastery at their grade level. We're working on designing a district-wide toolkit, and Darcy's website is part of that. We also want to have a complementary website where all the tools, all the forms, and everything that people need to have a successful PLC would be easily available to staff. And we're also taking a look at what kind of instructional professional learning do we need to bolster teachers' sense of efficacy, confidence about where they are in their practice and what they need next. And that would include data literacy, how to design, implement, and work with common formative assessment, which is essentially what do I teach next to either close gaps or take kids to the next step, and how to differentiate instruction. So that is where we are currently, and I wonder if anybody has any questions. I talked fast, I think.
I just want to thank you. That presentation is so much of why I want to be on a school board. Is I think I have a real drive for data, and I've always kind of struggled to understand how the data then informs the work in the classroom. And I feel like this is really bringing it together. I also want to, I had the opportunity to participate in the first call. It was the night of the JTC dedication. So I was multitasking at the time, but it was really, it's great work. And I'm so glad that the district is part of it and participating in this project, because I think our students are really going to benefit from it.
I've really enjoyed these presentations because I think it's been able, like, I think the PLC was really nice to kind of see how curriculum and how each different, because I think being the new one on the board still, like, I'm still learning about kind of really what each department does. And so I think the best part about all of this is just how all of our work, what everyone's doing, is working together. I think that's just been what I really took away from this, was that, you know, us doing the equity policy, us trying to do, making sure that all of our students are, it's also affecting the other parts, you know, that are moving along. And so thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to say that I think I've just really enjoyed hearing everyone's presentations, because I think it gives me a better perspective as to kind of how we as the board, how our decisions affect you and how your decisions affect us. I think that's just how we're all working together, you know, and I think the priority is the students.
Thanks.
I think as this project evolves, I think there's probably opportunity to share this publicly, right, with families, so parents can understand. I mean, right now, people just know that I have to pick my kid up earlier once a week, but to really understand the intensity and the intentionality of this work and how then it translates to their students' learning. I think there will be some value as this continues to progress.
And I just want to add on to what Kyle just said, is that PLCs are not another name for teacher team meetings. I mean, they are, but that's not in the old school sense. This is like really looking at the data about what kids are learning and where the gaps are, where the excitement is, and which, not only that, but in which rooms, which teachers have the skill set that they can share with their team, and how do we leverage that? Because this teacher obviously has figured out how to make, I don't know, algebraic equations, you know, anyway, you know, look exciting to their kids. So now how do we use that? And then this teacher has learned how to do something else remarkable, and how do we leverage that in our team? And it's just, I'm just so excited about this whole night with talking about Vita and the work with the teachers, and then having all the resources easily accessible to our teachers, and then having all of this data-driven learning and teaching and seeing it all come together in a way that makes sense for our kids and for our families. So thank you.
Christy, thank you so much for sharing this evening. And to your comment, Kathy, this is what you have asked for as a board, is to get this kind of information and to organize in this way. So we appreciate the direction and kind of the ongoing check-ins. And when you identified the goals in August, you know, student learning was obviously a priority, and these were strands within that: the curriculum and resources, the community engagement with those, the PLC process. So all of this is kind of working forward on those board developed goals. And so we'll continue to check in with you. I also really appreciated, as Christy was talking and trying to bring all of this together. That's the challenge for us, is it feels like there's a lot going on, but everything is very connected. And so the more that we can do that and recognize that a guaranteed and viable curriculum is our student equity work. And so inclusionary practices is our PLC work. So that will be helpful as we move forward. So Christy, thank you so much.
You got it. And we'll be back next week with Lucy to talk about dual language, Kyle. So you'll hear more about that too.
I have 2 items left. We already covered the public policy agenda in the board docs part of the agenda. So I'll move through that. And then can you believe it that we're at like 7 o'clock maybe? Yeah, we're at 7 o'clock and we're going to talk about pandemic for the first time. That's refreshing, right? Typically we start with this, and you know, we're still dealing with a lot, but I think some positive is that we're seeing, you know, for 4 straight weeks, rates that are dropping. So that's encouraging. You know, staff are still working really hard on contact tracing and recognizing that it's affecting families with the quarantine and staff with quarantine. So there's some, definitely, I don't want to minimize at all the effort that's going on related to this, but it's nice to talk about teaching and learning tonight, and know that we are still paying very close attention to this. And monitoring our plans and adjusting accordingly. So I don't know if there's any questions about pandemic. I just really was going to share this slide tonight.
I don't have a question per se, but I just wonder a quick update about the testing in schools, because I know that that's new. And I know that our central office team is helping staff that. Just maybe an update on what that's for our community.
So we do have diagnostic screening testing going on. The goal is to have that at all schools, but we are struggling with staffing still, as we noted in our last board meeting, that we are down in terms of number of staff. And then when you add quarantines and those kinds of situations, having symptoms, it's really all hands on deck. So right now we are providing a central location for community to come and get their diagnostic testing at JPC. And so last week we did, I want to say, about 250 tests there of adults and students. And then I think we're probably approaching 200 in the 2 days. It seems that we're noticing Mondays are very high volume days. And so our goal is to get the health room staff assistants in place and be able to provide this service at the school level in the next couple weeks. But until that time, we want to provide the service at least centrally for community members. And again, this is all voluntary. Students have to have permission to be tested. It's an option for people just trying to navigate this. We feel like more options for families, the better off we are.
Thank you.
So that's all the content we had for tonight. We're putting a lot in there. We're trying to chunk it for you so that there's some informational ones and then there's some conversational ones as too. But like you heard, it's from some of our presenters, we are coming back with some other goal areas next week in the study session. And like before, we'll get those agendas out to you ahead of time so that you can prepare yourself to ask questions or just be ready for the content. So with that, I think my part of the meeting is over, Kyle, so I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. Just a couple updates. Our next meeting is a study session next Tuesday via Zoom. And we have also a couple more school dedications, Truman on October 28th and King on 11/2. And then our next regular board meeting is on November 9th. And I believe there's a school dedication, Walnut Grove is on November 10th. So there's the upcoming calendar. Thank you, everyone, and we will adjourn.